we have another really sad anecdotal example that demonstrates just how important Medicare for All is and why we need it as soon as possible. So there was one individual who was not feeling good, but he couldn't see a doctor because he didn't have money. He didn't have insurance. He was self-employed and he just couldn't see a doctor. But his fate changed and he was finally hopeful for the first time in a long time. So as Cron4 News reports, at the beginning of January, Donald Savastano was one of the luckiest men in New York after he won $1 million on a scratch-off lottery ticket. Weeks later, he was dead from cancer. This is going to change our lives, to tell you the truth, Savastano told WBNG earlier this month after finding out he had won the money. Savastano won the money in New York's Merry Millionaire scratch-off ticket and had said he already had some plans in mind. I'm probably going to get a new truck and, I don't know, probably go on vacation, Savastano said. However, another plan was to seek medical care he couldn't afford before winning the money. He was self-employed. He didn't have insurance. He hadn't been feeling good for a while, I guess. And when he got the money, he went into the doctor. Cashier Danielle Scott told WBNG. The news wasn't good. Savastano was diagnosed with stage 4 cancer. On Friday, Savastano died just 23 days after winning the lottery. I was hoping that the money was maybe going to save his life, said Scott. So it was too late. He finally felt hopeful because he had money to see a doctor, but it was too late. He died. So this doesn't happen in countries with Medicare for All and single-payer healthcare. You shouldn't have to win the lottery to finally get in to see a doctor. And who knows if maybe he got to a doctor sooner, it would have saved his life, but maybe it could have prolonged his life. This is why Medicare for All is crucial and why I will never check the box of a politician that does not support Medicare for All explicitly. I don't care about these platitudes about, healthcare is a human right, because neoliberal Democrats, they've co-opted some of the language we're using when we talk about Medicare for All. They say healthcare is a right, but I support affordable healthcare or access to affordable healthcare. That's not good enough. People are literally dying because they can't afford to go to the doctor, and this man finally thought that he was going to be able to see a doctor because he won the lottery. I mean, you shouldn't have to win the lottery to see a doctor, but this is happening in the United States of America in 2018. People are dying because they don't have healthcare. He was self-employed, didn't have health insurance. There should be no person in this country that isn't able to visit a doctor because they don't have money. The thought that someone can't see a doctor if they're sick because they don't have money and they can't afford it, it's immoral, it's unacceptable, and anyone who doesn't find this morally reprehensible, I question their humanity. Because this is not who we are. This is not even anti-American. This is anti-human. As a species, you'd think that we'd care about taking care of one another because of, empathy. We know that suffering sucks. None of us want to suffer. So we should all collectively come together to make sure that we do what we can to limit suffering, to make it so that way as few people suffer as possible. But we live in a country that is dominated by greed and health insurance industry profits. See, if we have Medicare for All, those health insurance industries, they'd probably go out of business. Who would want to pay for a private insurance company when they have Medicare for All? Because in countries with Medicare for All systems or universal healthcare systems, they like it. It's adequate. It's sufficient. And now we have here a situation where this guy was hopeful for the first time in a long time, and it was too late for him. You should never have to hope that you can win the lottery in order to see a doctor. That it blows my mind. It absolutely blows my mind. But there are people who read this and think that this is acceptable. Well, he should have maybe spent his money elsewhere. He should have pulled himself up by his bootstraps. He should have saved to see a doctor. It's easy to say if you're not actually in that predicament, or if you were raised with a silver spoon in your mouth, which is what most rich politicians will say when you tell them about Medicare for All. Or they'll say, oh, we can't afford this because Medicare for All is too expensive. Actually, it's cheaper than our system now. And even if that weren't the case, if Medicare for All was more expensive than our current system, what's your point? We spend more than half of discretionary spending, which makes up about a third of our total budget, discretionary spending, that is. We spend more than half of that on the military, where we kill people, on unnecessary wars. This is embarrassing. As an American, this is so embarrassing. A couple of weeks ago, I talked about how a hospital actually dumped a patient off at a bus stop. She was half naked, literally in a medical gown, incoherent, and she didn't have anywhere to go. But they dropped her off, they discharged her because presumably she didn't have insurance and couldn't continue paying to stay overnight. Again, we really have to decide as a country who we're going to be. Are we going to look out for each other, or are we going to allow this to continue to happen? So that way people have to hope they can win the lottery to finally see a doctor. I mean, put yourself in this guy's shoes. Imagine finally winning the lottery, how happy you'd be, and then realizing you have stage 4 cancer. He had brain and lung cancer. And it didn't take much time. He died. It's a gut-wrenching story. And it sucks to read this. It's hard to read this, but we can't look away. We can't bask in ignorant bliss, even though it's easy to do that. We have to address these issues. We have to realize that this is happening, and we can never lose our sense of outrage.
Support this podcast by becoming a patron at patreon.com/Humanist Report.